More on that major news that we're following in the fight for marriage equality. A roster of prominent Republicans signing off on a legal brief that aims to shoot down California's Proposition 8 opposing marriage equality. Now, heavy hitters, really heavy hitters, lead the way here. Former governors, top advisors to former President George W. Bush, including National Security Advisor Stephen Hadley and Bush Commerce Secretary Carlos Gutierrez. Legal experts say that these names could sway the high court as it takes up two cases on marriage equality in March. Joining me now is Jimmy LaSalvia, co-founder and executive director of GOProud, a U.S. political action group representing LGBT conservatives, and MSNBC political analyst Steve Schmidt, former senior strategist for the presidential campaign of Arizona Senator John McCain. Gentlemen, it's good to have you here. Steve, I want to start with you because your John Hancock is on this brief. You're one of the many to sign on, and in the New York Times you're quoted as saying that the die is cast. Explain why you wanted to be a part of this, and how do you hope it's going to influence the high court as it considers Prop 8?
Look, I support marriage equality for gay Americans because of my conservatism, not in spite of it. When I look at my own marriage, the profound joy that it has brought me, for us to have a position as Republicans that tries to disenfranchise people from that, which has been affirmed by the Supreme Court on 14 different occasions, that marriage is just a fundamental right. That you see a group of Republicans, I think, embracing historic foundations in our party of freedom, of equality, and I think that you will see more and more people coming out, being in support of marriage equality. And when you look at youngers in this country, when you look at the younger generation, that generation believes in marriage equality. And so this issue is one where the die is cast, and ultimately gay Americans will receive full and equal treatment under the law, and hopefully the Supreme Court will expedite the day that that happens.
Jimmy, we've certainly seen that LGBT Americans have a friend in the White House. Bloomberg, though, is reporting that President Obama may be getting ready to show nationwide support for marriage equality as the high court gets ready to meet. However, on the flip side, we've got the National Journal reporting that there's certainly discomfort within the Republican Party for support on that issue. So what's your response to that? And not as someone who just represents LGBT members of the GOP, but is also trying to challenge the party's leadership to move in a more tolerant direction.
Right. Well, I think that many in the establishment in Washington are out of touch. They're out of touch on this issue and a lot of issues, frankly. But they don't even know what their own base thinks. And this brief today is another example of how conservatives are thinking about the issue of same-sex marriage differently. You know, all politics is personal, and everybody thinks about how issues affect their friends and family. And everybody has a gay person in their family now, and they want the best for their friends and family, and they want them to settle down and get married. So I think that more and more conservatives are thinking about this, and it's up to the leaders in Washington, the establishment, to really get in touch with what's happening among young conservatives and grassroots conservatives across the country, in that they're thinking about this issue differently and coming to support same-sex marriage for their friends and family.
You talk about the establishment in Washington, so we have these top moderate Republicans supporting this brief, Steve Schmidt being one of them. It's the civil rights issue of our time. And then on the other side, we look at the GOP base at CPAC announcing its lineup. As we look at them, none of the speakers have signed off on that brief. GOProud is not invited right now that I understand it to CPAC. This is the second year in a row. The National Journal says that this is a mistake. Do you think that you are being shut out on purpose? And in light of, as Steve points out, you know, in spite of the fact that there are conservative Republicans that recognize this as a conservative value, but for some reason there's still such deep homophobia that exists within the GOP that you can't be there at CPAC.
Well, I certainly disagree with that decision about CPAC, but we're focused on working to build a conservative coalition for 2013 that's a winning coalition. And that coalition has to recognize that people are thinking about this issue differently. I'm a pro-life social conservative. I'm a hardcore right-winger. And people all over the country that I talk to who think just like me are in favor of same-sex marriage. And the establishment, like I said, is out of touch. They're out of touch with the American people, and they're out of touch, frankly, with their own base. The base is moving on this, and they need to recognize that.
Steve, while I have you here, I want to get your take on New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, another big GOP gun who was not invited to CPAC. So Jimmy's in good company. The fact that the governor of New Jersey, a blue state who has approval ratings through the roof, is not going to be one of the speakers. It's all about appeal to a wider audience, CPAC is, and as Jimmy points out, and as you point out too, younger voters, they want to get to know who the future leaders of the right are, what they stand for, what they support. So why does the CPAC organization want to risk alienating burgeoning stars like a Chris Christie, not invite him?
Look, this CPAC convention is increasingly the Star Wars bar scene of the conservative movement. I mean, all that's missing at that convention is a couple of Wookiees. You know, look, Chris Christie's the most effective conservative governor in the country. He's done a fantastic job. He's somebody that could potentially change the electoral map. When you look at the dysfunction going on in government with the sequester, it makes a very compelling case for a Chris Christie candidacy because he's an adult. He's getting the job done. He understands what his role is. But I want to just set the record straight on something. I mean, CPAC is not the Republican Party. There are exclusionary policies that, you know, gay groups can't come and participate. And you look at some of the lineup of speakers, these are people that are on the fringe. These are people that don't attract a wider audience that we need to attract to win elections. They are talking to a small, closed group. It will get a lot of attention, but that group has almost no bearing on who we're going to pick as who our next nominee is.
But isn't that the same place where Romney declared that he was deeply conservative as a governor of Massachusetts? Doesn't it hold weight?
Well, there is certainly that, you know, candidates go there and they feel that they have to kowtow for some reason. But what I'm telling you is that in the real world, out states where people are voting in primary elections, that group doesn't hold sway. You know, what goes on there and the kowtowing that goes on there with some candidates has been absolutely debilitating. So, you know, Mitt Romney's, you know, going there and doing that, I think was a big mistake in his campaign. But
right.
The point is the Republican Party, and if you look at the Pew survey out, you have 36% of Republicans are dissatisfied with the direction of the party. A good number of those are people that want the Republican Party out of the bedroom window. They want the Republican Party to again stand for the timeless principles of freedom and equality.
I want to thank both gentlemen for joining me. GOProud Executive Director, Co-founder Jimmy LaSalvia, and MSNBC political analyst Steve Schmidt. A big groundbreaking movement on marriage equality from the right. Gentlemen, thanks so much for your time. I do appreciate it.